Welcome, welcome everybody who is and will be tuning in to Sound Thoughts with Pastor Marvin McKenzie. This is October 14th, 2023. Right off the bat, I'd like to say, boy, I hope my sound is coming through. Every once in a while, I like to use my AirPods, and every once in a while, my computer will fool me, and I've got a little deal up there that says that my AirPods are connected, but then when I turn on the live streaming, it says that I'm using the computer's microphone. So if I take out the AirPods, which I've done a couple of times, that means there's no sound at all. So I have no idea right now if there is sound, or if the sound's coming through my AirPods, or if the sound's coming through the computer. I'm not sure which one it is. So I'm just going to do the best that I can, kind of experimenting with it a little bit, I guess, today, just to see what happens with it and how it all works out. So I'm going to start out with an update on my wife's cancer situation. Anita was fitted for her radiation on last Tuesday. I said they created a jig. The doctor said that he's going to put her in a bean bag and they're going to suck all the air out of it and make a mold. Anita said it wasn't very much like a bean bag. It was kind of harder than that. She said she was surprised because she thought it would kind of suck her in there and make her hold her real tight inside it, and it did not do that. So she didn't feel like it gave her any kind of claustrophobia. She said it looks like she's going to be inside, like maybe a CT scan. The radiation, maybe even she thinks might even be done within that CT machine. She's not sure of those sorts of things, but they prepared her for it. She said she didn't feel claustrophobic at all, which is good because she gets claustrophobic. She said it wasn't anywhere near as bad as the MRIs were that she had to have prior to her surgery back in March. And so she's all set up for that. It'll begin October the 24th will be the practice run, and then daily after that for 5 weeks, 25 sessions for 5 weeks. She also had physical therapy session on Friday, and they wanted her when she started chemotherapy to enroll in a physical therapy session. And it's been whatever couple of weeks or so is how she's done it. This last time, I think they waited a month. And really, it's not so much to increase strength. What they want to do is they want to measure how her body is responding and whether she's losing strength or whatever in any given area, and just try to help her to maintain strength, because anything you lose in the chemotherapy, that's just that much harder to regain after chemotherapy is over. Anita has come up. Number one, they said she's already, even before it all began, she's so far ahead of most people her age that she could lose quite a bit and still be better off than most people her age would be. But she's lost nothing during the process of the chemotherapy. She didn't lose any. This was her last post chemotherapy physical therapy. She's lost nothing and improved in a couple of areas. She has 2 more physical therapies that are scheduled. One of them will be in the middle of the radiation treatments. They just want to check her one more time then, and they'll do a final time at the end of radiation just to see how she's done through the entire process. And so we are seeing her body begin to kind of heal and repair itself in almost every area. And we're very, very thankful for that. She's got some areas that, we know this is just takes some time, and it's just going to take some time for it to come back. And but we are thankful. We're grateful to God for his goodness and for his care, and for how well Anita is doing at this time. Today is Saturday, of course. I always do my sound thoughts on Saturday. At least that's my intention, to do my sound thoughts on Saturdays. And so today is Saturday, and that means preparing for messages for tomorrow, Sunday. The best day of the whole week is Sunday, the day that we dedicate and that we've set aside to worship and serve our God. And so I believe a Christian ought to, while Sunday is the first day of the week, and that's the day Christians worship God, and we remember and memorialize the resurrection of Lord Jesus Christ. Originally, God had for the Jews, Saturday would be the 7th day of the week. That was the day that God rested, and the Jews were to rest on that day is as a memorial that God rested on the seventh day of creation. And I kind of think it's a 2-day type of thing. We've got a weekend. Saturday is given to the first observance, and just kind of we focus that day. And I use my Saturday to focus on what's coming up on Sunday. That's what I try to do anyway. And so we're preparing for that. Sunday school tomorrow. I began just recently a series out of the book of out of the Beatitudes, Matthew in chapter number 5. And tomorrow we'll be looking at blessed are they that mourn. And so I believe I'm going to call that finding comfort in grief. Finding comfort in grief. The Beatitudes are a paradox, aren't they? The blessing, blessed means happy. Happy and blessed are those, and every one of the Beatitudes is really something that in our mind, in the flesh, we would not consider to be a blessing. I mean, we would look at this and say, boy, avoid that at all cost. And yet God says, blessed is the person who chooses not to avoid those things. And so we'll be looking at the comfort in grief tomorrow. In the morning message, we talk about, remember the lawyer came up to Jesus, Matthew 22, and which is the great commandment of the law? And Jesus said, well, the great commandment is to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and the soul and thy mind. And he said, the next one is like unto it, to love your neighbor as yourself. And I'll be preaching on the greatest commandment. Lord, what wilt thou have me to do? And the greatest commandments. Pastor Caleb will be preaching tomorrow night. Looking forward to hearing from him. Boy, in our world this week, it's been something. Last week, just before I recorded our Sound Thoughts program, I saw where candidate for governor Dave Reichert had taken a stand with supporting Israel in the attacks that they had experienced on that day. And it's turned out, the attacks in Israel, one Israeli spokesman that I heard from, a reserve officer in the Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, said that in order to see a day worse than last Saturday, October the 7th, we'd have to go all the way back to the Holocaust to see where so many Jews were murdered in one single day. Terrific, terrifying, horrific event that took place last Saturday. Of course, there's all kinds of different points of view, depending upon your background and your persuasions, and probably the influencers that you have in your life. You probably have different ideas, whether I've heard people say, well, I've heard people justify Hamas for such atrocities because, of the afflictions and cruelties that they say Israel has placed upon them. One fella this week said that Israel has been doing the very same thing to Palestinians for decades. I asked him to produce some kind of documented evidence of that taking place. And but all kinds of different ideas. I can't imagine that anyone would think it's ever okay to behead a baby. Can't imagine. But we live in a strange world. This world is naturally inclined to the unjust. It just is that way. And so those of us who incline to the Lord, we're looking into this world. We see all kinds of weird things going on. And the Beatitudes, the paradox of the Beatitudes becomes a reality for every single day of our lives as we as believers look into this world and see the things that are going on. But I am glad, for the most part, it appears that our country is honoring its commitment to our friends in Israel. I'm glad for that. I have an interesting ongoing conversation. Don't know how long it'll go on, with a man who initially challenged my support of Israel, and in the midst of the conversation at some point, he says, do you actually know the history of Palestine? And I do know something about the history of Palestine, but of course I know it from a biblical point of view. And so, I do have a bias because of that. I believe God gave that land to his children, Israel. I believe he did that thousands of years ago. And so whoever you want to say, the Canaanites and so forth, all ahead of time, I think it is interesting. Gaza, the area that is at issue right now, is where the Philistines were from. And Philistines, I think Philistine as I think Palestine is a modernization of the word Philistine. And so I think that's an interesting thing, that the area that is in conflict right now is the area where the Philistines, that were such a terrible enemy of the Jews in the days of Saul and David and before, is what's going on right now. But anyway, so this fellow says, do you actually know the history of Palestine? And I wrote back, said, yeah, actually I do. I've recently, a friend of mine, actually a couple years ago, gave me a book called I Am Cyrus, Harry S. Truman and the Rebirth of Israel. It's written by a man by the name of Craig von Busick, I believe it is. And so I was able to actually send him a link to that book. He said, thanks, I'll check it out. We'll see how that goes. I really do believe positive conversations from people on both sides is going to be the most beneficial thing that we can do. And I really am looking for opportunities to get into, not arguments and debates and, attacks one with another, but get into some serious conversations and just kind of talk over our viewpoints. You have a person say, well, you don't know that much, or I could say, well, yeah, but you only learn it from one side. And we talk about our worldviews. And the problem is so often what we do is we just challenge each other that your worldview is no good, without even knowing what the other person's worldview is. And so to be able to actually talk about positions and worldview really makes some sense to me. So moving on to another subject, Eric Hovind. Now, I think Eric Hovind's dad, who at one time was a fundamental Baptist preacher, evangelist, creation scientist type of a promoter, I think he's gone south in some doctrine. Eric Hovind, his son, my understanding, has kind of changed camps from his dad, and I don't exactly know where Eric Hovind ended up completely. But I do know that I like some of his short videos and some of the little stuff that he does on creation science. This last week, I said something positive about one of his little videos, and a guy has attacked me and made a picture of someone wearing a tinfoil cap, and called me, said I won the tinfoil award this week, and that kind of a thing. And he just because I believe the Bible, that means I must not believe in science. And because I believe here, this is a truth, because I believe the Bible, I believe that what is modern science is really science falsely so called. That I do believe in science. I believe in sound science. I believe the Bible actually even promotes and provides sound science and the basis for sound science. But what we have today, it is not science at all, because it can't be observed. Evolution, they can't observe it. They don't see it happening today, and it can't be reproduced. They can't say, here is what I think happened, billions of years ago, and here's why I know that my position is true, my theory is true, because here, let me show you, I'm going to make it happen again. They can't do that. They're just theorizing. And so I think it's a lot more like a good guys club, where all of these modern day scientists, what they do is they go to school to learn how to prop up one another's ideas, and they come up with their own ideas. That's how they make a name for themselves. But there's nothing new under the sun, and all it is really a means to try to say, here's how everything exists without God. Because if there's no God, they're not responsible to him. Well, anyway, back to Hovind, Eric Hovind. I saw where he promoted a video called Forensic Science and Creation, where he has a forensic scientist, actually works for, I think, Answers in Genesis, and he interviews her. Forensic Science and Creation. I think it's worth checking out. It's 31 minutes long. It'd be worth checking out. By the way, by my saying that, this would be worth checking out, I'm not saying that I agree with everything that Eric Hovind is and stands for. I don't know everything Eric Hovind is and stands for. I do know that I've enjoyed some of his creation material. I believe that we as Christians, we need to be up on creation. We get bombarded in this world with evolutionary theory. We are bombarded by it. It is on your entertainment when you watch television. It is in your news. It is in the schools. It is in the books that you read. We are bombarded with information, with evolutionary theory and ideas and thought. And so we, in order to counteract that, we have to purposely look for creation science. And so Eric Hovind seems to have some good stuff to help us out with that. Matters of prayer. We ought to be praying for the leaders of our world in the day in which we live. We need to be in much prayer for the leaders of our world, for good minds to prevail, for reasonable minds to prevail, reasonable minds in Israel, reasonable minds in America, reasonable minds in Russia and Ukraine and around the world, reasonable minds in North Korea. We need to pray for reasonable minds and people for the leaders of the world, that we may live quiet and peaceable lives in godliness and honesty. And I'm always reminded when we pray that we may lead quiet and peaceable lives in godliness and honesty, remember that the priority is to pray for souls to be saved. Always pray for souls to be saved. Pray for those that are serving for our protection, both locally, that would be the police, and then in other places, that would be the military. And we sure need it. I live right next to JBLM, Joint Base Lewis McChord, and they practice all the time. So there's planes flying over constantly, and I can hear oftentimes the mortars and the gunfire and so forth that's going on at JBLM. But it does seem in that last week, there has been some really heavy gunfire kind of stuff going on over there. And so just want to pray for our military, keep them in prayer. Pray for those that are battling cancer. Chloe Rochester, praying for her, praying for my wife, Anita, praying for a good friend of mine, Kelly Anderson. I understand he has good outcome, but continue to pray for him. I have a friend, a preacher friend by the name of Ron Patterson. I understand that he has just recently, this week, is going on hospice care, has pancreatic cancer. Stage number 4 is what it was, but at this point, he is going into hospice care. Also, another family I'd like to ask you to pray for. I've got a preacher friend by the name of Tom Wallace back in Hickory, North Carolina, and he's got 2 granddaughters, Sophie and Charlotte. Both of them, I think Charlotte is 2 years old and Sophie is a few months old. And they both have a terminal illness called Battens disease. You can look it up if you want to do that. The family is displaying incredible grace. God is lifting them up and holding them up in this time. And I thank the Lord for that. But I'd like to encourage you to pray for and support the Wallace family and little Sophie and Charlotte Wallace. And ask you to look into down below you in the descriptions. You're going to see several links to the books and other content that I've created. I ask you to take a look into there. And especially if you have read any of my books, most recent one that I've finished is the Book of Jude, Contending for the Faith. You can find it on Kindle in a Kindle format and also paperback. You can see the link down below for that. And I encourage you to, write a review of what my books. It looks to me like it's the 14th day of the month, and I'm almost at the highest month of sales that I've ever had. Now that's not a ton. The highest I've ever had is like $101, and I'm almost $100 now on the 14th. And so I might reach either match or maybe even beat the highest month I've ever had in book sales. I was talking to my wife yesterday. In order to actually sell books, selling books has to become your full-time business. It has to be one of those deals where I'm willing to travel and to speak at events meant to sell books. and that sort of thing. And I'm just not willing to do that. That's not my focus, and really where I want to be. I do sometimes take books with me when I go to different speaking engagements or different pastors meetings. I sometimes take my books with me. I was just at a meeting this last week in Yakima Home Missions Conference, and I've taken my books there for years, and they allow me to set up a display table, but I never even stand at the table. So this year, went there, and the last day when I got ready to put my books away, I saw there was money. Actually, someone had just taken some money and they put it underneath my business cards. And since I wasn't there, usually what they end up doing is someone will come up and say, "Hey, I bought a book from you, and I gave the money to your son," or my sons will come up. One of my boys will come up and say, "Here, Dad, someone bought one of your books and gave me the money," and which is a really poor business model, I guess. I don't know what books they bought, and I'm not good at counting how many that, taking inventory. I don't, it's just not a matter to me. I want people to have the material. If I benefited in the study and the preparation for it. And so I'm hoping that they're going to benefit, that they can benefit from, okay. You can come in. My wife just got here, and so she's going to be here in right now. And so there's my daughter-in-law as well. She's here, and so they're both walking in quietly, and then they're going to slip out quietly as well, I think. And so anyway, but if I'm not much of a businessman with the books, and so just encourage you, if you would want to buy something, order it on Amazon. That'd be wonderful. And if you'll leave me a review for anything that you've read of mine, I would be thankful for that. Want to also remind you that in my Daily Visit with God podcast, that's every day. It drops at 6:30 in the morning. I try to produce them a little bit, record them a little bit ahead. So right now, I think I'm 8 days ahead. But right now I'm in the book of only 2 to 3 minutes long. Right now I'm in the book of Psalms. And here's the thing about the Psalms. The Psalms deals with almost every emotion. In fact, I'm sure every emotion known to man. I'm not going to probably hit every emotion known to man, but the Psalms will. And we're going to go through the Psalms just carefully, one at a time. I think to the last one I've recorded now, or I think the one that dropped today is in Psalms 15. And so if you or someone is depressed or discouraged or disappointed or tired or afraid, or they have hurt feelings, something's going on in their life like that, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my podcast. It is Marvin McKenzie. That's one word, marvinmckenzie.substack.com, and subscribe there. You'll get them every day as they drop. You can listen to it, of course, any time of the day you want to. And if you will subscribe to it on Substack, then you can leave comments that I'll be able to get and respond to. And so that's it for today. God bless you, and we'll see you next week.